I just want to say the meeting is still, I don't want anyone to think that the meeting's over, because now for this next part of the meeting, we're going to talk about how you can advocate for your kids in the school and, you know, work with your teachers, work with a principal, work with all of the support systems that are in place in Montgomery County. So I'm going to bring back Michelle Gluck, and she's going to share with you some information about, you know, how to really advocate for your child, given all these problems that we've just heard.
Hi, everybody. Before I get started, I want to say a few things. First of all, thank you to Kim and Lang for stepping up to take over this committee when I rather abruptly stepped away from it in an unexpected time frame. I know that they're finding that kind of challenging, and I hope you will all give them the same support that you've given me over the last 4 years as we go forward into combining larger forces into even better advocacy. And then the other thing I'm going to mention, as former chair, I can't help it, if you didn't sign in and put your information on the sign-in sheet on the way in, please do it on the way out and fill out the feedback form. It's available online this year because Lang is much more technically adept than I am. So you can fill it out online, which will actually make it easier for them to sign you up for our various announcement and discussion listservs, which are a great way to get information about GT programs and advocacy opportunities and issues and questions and solutions that other people have thought of and come up with over the years. So with that, I think I hope I won't embarrass Meredith a bit by what I'm about to say next, because I intended to start after she left. This is my 9th year as an MCPS parent, and in the course of that time, I have known 4 different AEI directors. So they have so far historically lasted an average of 2 years or less in my experience. It's not quite like teaching Defense Against the Dark Arts at Hogwarts, but it comes pretty close. People don't last long in that position, and it's because it's a difficult job to be the person responsible for gifted education in a time when there are so many needs out there that aren't about students who need advanced level opportunities. And those of us who have gifted children know that we are perceived as being the lucky ones who already have more than our fair share of life's resources, and why should we get extra attention, and why should our kids get things that other kids don't get? And it's very difficult to explain, as a couple people have mentioned earlier, that this is a special needs group, that it isn't a matter of it being, you know, it's not lucky to be bored. You're not lucky if everything's too easy for you. It's actually really bad. It's bad for you. It's discouraging. It burns kids out in education. It deprives them of the opportunity to learn the character traits that everybody gets from tackling a difficult problem and overcoming it. They are, in fact, a special needs population, but it's very difficult to advocate for them when you have this yawning gulf of need of kids who aren't even reading at grade level and who, you know, get out of high school without ever even passing Algebra 2 and things like that. So this job that Meredith has is really hard. It's hard because she doesn't even have the support of the entire school system behind her. And the only way to make her job successful is for all of us who need the service that her office is designed to provide, to tell MCPS, to tell the Board of Education, to tell everybody who's in a decision-making and budget-wielding position that we are out here and we have needs and our kids are just as important as everybody else. And yes, MCPS, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can address the achievement gap. We can look at this vast gulf of needs and also address the needs of gifted students. And furthermore, we have to do that because if we don't, if the public schools do not address the needs of the whole spectrum of the public, then the public schools lose the support of the people with the most resources and the most energy to make them good for everybody. I come from California, so I've watched this happen in real time. A school system that used to be great has slowly disintegrated because after budget cuts, all the focus was made on the neediest at the expense of other students, and they all left and went to private school. And once their parents are no longer getting any benefit from the public schools, they don't see the need to pay taxes to support them. They don't see the need to be politically active to support them, and eventually the school systems becomes terrible for everybody. So, you know, we matter on a bunch of levels. We matter because all kids are important. We matter because every child deserves to learn something every day, because all children deserve to be instructed, even if they come into the system already knowing everything at the grade level. And so in order to make that point, we have to speak up. And in order for Meredith to be effective, we have to support her vocally. It's not enough to come here and barrage her with all the things that we haven't fixed yet. We also have to talk to the people that she reports to and the people who control her budget and the people who control her staffing and tell them we want more. You with me? Okay. So last year, when I made the speech after Meredith and Ruth had left, and I said, you know, Meredith and Ruth have just come in, and I'm cautiously optimistic because Meredith was the first AEI director I had ever met who actually seemed both interested in making things better for GT kids and also had the, I would say, intestinal fortitude to stand up to all of the forces that are hostile to GT kids. And so I was cautiously optimistic. And a year later, and this is where I'm going to embarrass you, Meredith, a year later, I'm actually genuinely optimistic because we have made a real year of progress. There's still a lot to be done, but the difference between this year and last year compared to last year and the 7 years before that is like night and day. It's been a breath of fresh air, and I can't tell you how excited I am to be. Okay, but you got the gist of it. You got the gist of it. You know, as Meredith and Ruth leave, I'm just going to say that I am really still optimistic and excited, and I want all of you to recognize the difference between this year and all the years that came before and continue to support them with your energy and your enthusiasm and your advocacy. Okay, and with that, we'll say goodnight to them. Okay, so, you know, so we talk about advocacy. What's that going to mean in the current world? I'm going to talk for a few minutes about the achievement gap, and I will get to how that relates to the problems we all face here today in a minute. The achievement gap is an incredibly important issue. It is an MCCPTA focus this year. The executive committee, of which I'm a member, has made that one of our focus issues, is what we can do, if anything, to analyze the achievement gap, to support the school system in ameliorating the achievement gap. And it is very important to society. I mean, the wasted resources of underachievement affect all of us. And it's very important. And I don't want anything I'm about to say to make you think that this is something I don't care about deeply, because I really do. And I want to see in our efforts to solve the achievement gap, I want to see actual progress and not the appearance of progress. And I think what we have seen over the last couple of years is, I mean, this is problems been brewing for a long time, but for the last couple of years, it's really become clear that the need to create the appearance of progress on the achievement gap has become the overarching concern of MCPS in particular and educators in general, at the expense of everything else, including actual achievement gap narrowing. So it's not just bad for our kids, it's bad for the kids who are actually supposed to benefit from the efforts to close the achievement gap. But nothing I'm going to say about this should in any way be taken to mean that the achievement gap isn't really, really important. It is. Okay, but here at this meeting, what I'm going to say is the single-minded focus on the achievement gap is the biggest barrier to genuine advanced level opportunities in MCPS schools outside the magnet programs. There are many ways to describe the achievement gap, but I think they can all be really distilled into one. I would distill it as follows. The achievement gap is the difference in achievement between the achievement of students who come from stable homes, who aren't changing schools every 6 months or every year, who have stable food supplies, who are not insecure in whether or not they're going to get 3 meals a day, who do not come to school hungry, who have stable families, that include parents who are there every day when they come home and have both the energy and the resources to pay attention to their achievement in school, and parents who have personal experience of what education can do, you know, college education, but in education in general, and who are therefore invested in making sure their children get those opportunities, and the achievement of children who lack 1, 2, 3, or all of those resources. And that is a society-wide problem. It has a lot of different causes. I've alluded to some of them. And the root causes of poverty are even deeper set. But the point is, it's a community-wide problem. It's a society problem. It is not one that the school system has any chance in hell of solving by itself. And yet, it has been tasked in doing so. Partly it's the education field's own fault. They have nobly stepped up to say, no excuses. You know, we are going to solve the problem. We can't say, you know, a child's impoverished, a child has no food, a child is this. We have to solve it all by ourselves. And partly by society at large, which has said, hey, schools, if you don't educate them all, it's your problem because you're the schools. That's your job. We do not contribute that. We don't have any responsibility. It's your job. And if you don't do it, we're going to shake our fingers at you, but we're not going to do anything to think about the outside of school causes that relate to the achievement gap. I had this conversation several times at the metro station during the primary season with all the county executive candidates that I met, and I'd ask them, what's your role of the council in the achievement gap, closing the achievement gap, and they'd all start talking about the schools, and I'd say, wrong answer. Your role is to look at county housing policy. Your role is not to say schools, go fix it. Okay, so the schools have nobly stepped up and said, we can do it, it's, you know, all our problem, all on us. And I think, you know, these are sincere, well-intentioned, very committed people, and they go out there and they try all these tactics, and then they discover that, in fact, they can't do it, and yet they've said they could do it, and everyone's expecting them to do it. So when you find you can't do it, then the next thing the next easiest thing to do is to create the appearance of progress, all right? And there are two ways to create the appearance of progress. One is to eliminate opportunities for the upper levels to have any achievement, because that all by itself lowers the gap. And the other is to stop measuring whether anybody is achieving above grade level, because that also eliminates the evidence of the gap. So even if you have achievement opportunities and advanced level opportunities, but you're not measuring whether students are actually learning anything under those programs, and you're not rewarding your schools, your principals, your teachers for teaching those kids, you know, you're rewarding them only to the extent that they close the gap, then you will effectively eliminate the gap by just eliminating the upper end of the achievement scale. And that's what we're struggling with here. That's as I see it. Okay? Because after you earnestly try to do the impossible, and you're still expected to do the impossible, all that's left is to create the appearance of doing the impossible. And then you still feel pretty good about yourself. Okay, so, you know, I'm going to give, those of you who've worked with me before and know me know I am not a cynic. I don't come to this conclusion lightly, and I really do believe that most of the people in MCPS are genuinely well-motivated. But what I see happening is an increased trend towards creating bodies of data that eliminate the gap by just not measuring it anymore, all right? I'll give you an example. The MCPS goal to have all students complete algebra by 8th grade with a C or better has been in place for several years now. When it was first introduced, when that was first stated as a goal, the goal is actually to have 80% or more of our students finish algebra by the end of 8th grade with a D or better. And when I questioned that, I was told with a straight face that a D is a passing grade. So now the goal is a C or better, and every year they report metrics on how many students in each of the demographic groups that we're looking at in the achievement gap pass algebra by the end of 8th grade with a C or better. Now, how many of you think that a student who passes algebra with an A and a student who passes algebra with a C have the same mathematical future ahead of them? How many would agree with that? Okay, so if you were to measure, you know, how many students in each demographic group passed algebra at any point, really, it doesn't matter by what grade, with an A and how many with a B and how many with a C, you'd probably still see a gap. But if you measure it only with how many in each demographic group did a C or better, the gap goes away, right? Because you can have all your affluent students getting A's and all your disadvantaged students getting C's, but they're all doing C or better, so they're all doing the same. The standards-based report card, how many of you like it? Oh. The standards-based report card, you know, and if I may digress for a minute, I'm on record as being somebody who actually thinks the Common Core is an improvement. I like, generally speaking, the curriculum 2.0 as a curriculum. I don't like the way it's been implemented in a one-size-fits-all pace, but I do like the curriculum. And since I, too, have a guinea pig cohort child who's in 5th grade and has been in the first year, and I also have an older one who's not that much older, so I've seen in real time what those each look like. And I really do think there's a lot of improvement in 2.0. It's the pace that's wrong. The report card, oh my God. The report card is a 6-year exercise in pretending that in gap erasure, because we no longer measure whether students are barely proficient, adequately proficient, or really highly proficient. We just measure whether they are one of those 3 things, and they all get Ps. And then they'll come and tell you, oh, but we're giving you so much more information because we break down that P into each of the standards. So you know that your child is barely or adequately or really proficient in all the substandards too. You don't know which of the 3, but you know they're one of them because you get straight Ps. And there was an article Donna St. George wrote in the Washington Post a month or 2 ago, in which she quoted a parent who was saying that, you know, I have 2 children, they have very different educational strengths and weaknesses, and they have identical report cards, and there's something wrong when that happens. So what the report card is now doing, the report card used to be an individual report on an individual child to that child's parents, but now it's a tool for creating a body of data that shows that we've closed the achievement gap because everybody is at a C or better. Which is basically, I mean, I agree a P is not the same as a C, and that proficient at 2.0 is actually better than a C in the old curriculum. I completely agree with that. But we're still refusing to tell parents anything more than your child hit that mark wherever it is. And we know because, you know, like 80% of the kids get Ps. That doesn't mean everybody gets an A and that everybody is fully proficient. It means that there's a range of proficiency, you know. Proficient, quite proficient, really proficient, and only if you're extraordinarily proficient do you get the ES. So everybody else, I would say C+ to A- is in that P range, and so we've closed the gap. I mean, that's a huge gap that just got erased by the standard-based report card. We don't have to do anything other than that to say that we've done some erasure here. So, you know, this is the kind of thing that that we have to rise up against as a group and demand individual information about our individual kids as though our individual kids mattered. And then when you do that, you're going to be told, I mean, the first thing that happens, you go to the Board of Education and you say, I hate the report card because it no longer tells me, you know, my child's actual strengths and weaknesses. And they'll say, oh, you know, curriculum 2.0 is so whoop-de-doo wonderful that all you need to know through 6 years of elementary school is that your child is at least barely proficient in all these subjects. Okay, you don't need to know anything more. And if you push on, you say, well, I really would like to know whether my child is doing, you know, is firmly proficient, is, you know, is really solidly ready for middle school, then you get told, you know, the only reason you want to know that is because you want to be able to say to the neighbor's kid, my kid got an A, your kid got a B. You know, and so people will say that to you with a straight face. I mean, I've heard Board of Education members actually say this in public meetings, that, you know, we parents only care about grades before bragging rights. So that's the only reason a report card reported grades in the past, is for bragging rights. This is insulting, and we need to firmly and politely tell them this is insulting. You can't talk to us like this. You know, these are our kids. These are not fodder for you being able to go out on the lecture circuit and talk about how you closed the achievement gap in Montgomery County Public Schools. You know, these are our kids, and they deserve to be challenged, and they deserve to have the same character-building experiences of confronting something they didn't already know and mastering it, and, you know, learning what it feels like to fail before it actually really matters. You know, that other kids do. They deserve that opportunity as well, and it is the role of the public schools to provide that opportunity for everybody, all right? You know, so that's the message I want you guys to take away. We collectively have a really challenging advocacy problem, and what's been holding us back is individuals saying, well, you know, I don't want to talk about just my kid, or you know, we'll solve the problem by going out and getting enrichment for my kid, but, you know, I can't do anything about the system, it's too big, we'll just give up. And we don't talk to each other at our schools, we don't talk to each other at, you know, enough on meetings, we're not active enough on the listservs. When I'm finished talking, Patrick Dunn, the president of the Gifted and Talented Association of Montgomery County, is going to come and speak to you. GTA runs a very active discussion listserv that, or used to be active anyway. It's a great resource for parents. The same 15 people are the only ones who post on it. I want all of you on that list, swapping notes, comparing notes, naming your schools, talking about what you did and what you didn't do. Kim can tell you things about how to go out and demand, you know, and just politely go into the principal's office every week until she gets what she needs for her kid. That's the kind of skills we need to share with each other, and we need to all be out there and doing that. You know, it's not enough to, you know, just hunker down and try to get your kid through middle school. It's not enough to get your kid outside the school system what they need and give up. We all need to work together because some of us don't have the resources to go and buy thousands of dollars of enrichment. And furthermore, the biggest losers in this whole never measure achievement, upper level achievement dynamic are disadvantaged children of color who are highly able and could do great work if they had the opportunity, because they are in schools where they have very few peers, where there's no incentive of their schools to do anything, and their parents don't have the resources to go out there and get the enrichment and do it outside the school system. Our white hat aspect here is we need to do that for them. Those parents who are not in this room, and they almost never are in this room, they often even aren't on the PTA listservs, they don't hear about these meetings, they aren't engaged in this. We need to get them engaged too, and we need to do this so that all children have these opportunities throughout the whole county. Because the other problem that we're not going to have time to talk about tonight, but it's one that I hope we'll address later in the year, is that to the extent that advanced level opportunities exist, they exist quietly in the affluent parts of the county where all the parents demand it, and they don't exist at all in the parts of the county where there aren't very many parents who demand it, and there are lots of other students who have other needs. So what's the scope of the problem? Let me give you a very, very conservative answer. Well, I'll talk to you about that later. I'm not going to go on record and film and talk about that one. So here's the scope of the problem. Let me give you a very, very conservative answer. All right, there are 154,000 plus students in Montgomery County Public Schools. And we go through a global screening process in second grade that identifies a pretty ridiculously high percentage of them as GT. And then because that designation is meaningless when you apply it that broadly, that then translates into no action whatsoever, as those of you who are in third grade have discovered. You get the nice letter, and then third grade happens, and your kid's getting exactly the same thing as everybody else because it really doesn't mean anything. All right. So the national standard, if you look in the National Association for Gifted Children, the sort of national benchmark for giftedness is the top 10 to 15% of ability on the countywide spectrum. All right, so if we have 154,000 plus students in Montgomery County, 10 to 15% at least meet the national standard for gifted. That's 23,000 plus students, 23,000, all right? Maybe total 4,000 at most, are served in magnet programs specifically designed for gifted children. There are a lot of other signature and focus and this and that and the other students programs, some of which do have advanced level opportunities, some of them don't, some of them are really just window dressing. But another group, maybe a few more thousand, are served at an advanced level on these signature programs. Wow, that's a really interesting ringtone. So my optimistic spin is you have maybe 4,000 in the gifted programs. That's probably a high number. 3,000 might be more accurate. Maybe another few thousand in other programs that are serving them at a gifted level. That leaves over 15,000 students who almost certainly need something more than the rigorous, whoop-de-doo, great for everybody curriculum, which is a good curriculum, as it should be. But a great curriculum, on-grade level curriculum, should be really good for about 60% of the student body, and then there's 20% on either end for whom it's either too much or not enough. There is no one curriculum and no one pace that can possibly be good enough for everybody. We all know that. Common sense tells us that. And yet the schools keep saying, oh no, it's so great, it's rigorous, and we've got stuff, built in, and differentiation, and it all can work. I will talk about differentiation in a minute. So we have 15,000 students who almost certainly need something more than average pacing and curriculum in local standard issue curriculum schools, even pile. All right, if they're in elementary or middle school, they're very likely under-challenged, those 15,000 students. And that means everybody in K3, and then it means the 4 or 5 students, most of them who aren't in the magnets, and the middle school students who aren't in the magnets. And now that I've had a student go all the way through to middle school, I can tell you, and I've been watching this for a while, I can say that although Meredith is correct that AEI worked really, really hard and continues to work really, really hard to create accelerated enrichment opportunities within the standard curriculum, and in theory there should be differentiation and accelerated enrichment in every single class, including the ones that are already accelerated, including the 4 or 5 compacted class. All of those should have a group within that are even more accelerated and are getting enrichment opportunities. The fact of the matter is that particularly once you hit middle school, and for the most part even before that, there is no differentiation because it's too hard to do. It's too hard for teachers to teach multiple levels at the same time in a single classroom. Yes? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when you ask your principal, yeah.
There is no way that one teacher in a Superman cape can be teaching 5 small groups, including the one with extra accelerated enriched sprinkles, and doing a good job at it. It is not fair to that teacher, and it's not fair to any of those kids.
And what's more, if you ask the principal, how do you know that this small group instruction is happening? What are you doing to monitor that? You will get a blank stare because the principal can't go out and do that either. Excuse me?
A blank smile.
Yes, you're right. It's usually a blank smile. After a while, it will become a blank forced smile, and then it will become blank glare, but yes, I've been there. Well, here's the thing. So you're in 4th grade. Now, imagine what happens when your child is in 6th grade, and every one of his teachers has 150 students that he sees for 45 minutes a day. You think differentiation is going to happen there? Absolutely not. And yet that's what we're told is that, you know, in these middle schools where every single class is advanced, you don't have to worry because differentiation will take care of the students who are actually advanced. But in fact, once you get to middle school, every single kid gets the exact same instruction in the classroom. That's all there is. It's very rare for there to be anything else. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned the 45 minutes that everybody gets in middle school. And Pyle, I guess, is unique in that they get, for the most part, 90 minutes.
No, well, the block schedule is not unique, but it doesn't solve the problem because it's still the same number of students that on average he sees 45 minutes a day. He still has 150 students, and he still is not going to have the opportunity, for the most part, to get to know them well enough to differentiate. That's the problem. It's not even the time, because in theory you could plan the lesson well enough that if you knew which kids needed the acceleration, you could do it. But you have to actually be able to measure, and it changes from week to week. It's not like it's static. It's not like a child who's accelerated in one thing is automatically going to be accelerated in the other, and vice versa. You have to keep reevaluating. They don't have the time to do that. It's ridiculous to ask them to do that. You cannot have genuine advanced level opportunities without some degree of grouping. And the fact that MCPS still resists that is something that we're only going to be able to overcome with sustained group widespread advocacy. Okay, so what's our only hope of changing that is for us to rise up and demand it in enough numbers that the Board of Education will pay attention. That's really the only solution. Just a minute. Let me finish my rant, and then I'll call you. Okay, so here's what I want you guys to take away from this, all right? We have to work harder to get the attention of the decision makers, ultimately the board. And we know from vast experience, the only thing that gets the board's attention is large numbers of people showing up at their meetings and chanting at them. But really, I mean, look what happened with the school start times. They were all ready to kill it for reasons that really didn't make a lot of sense until a large number of parents showed up and got angry. And then they said, oh, wait, well, maybe we can reconsider. That's what will happen if we keep showing up and getting angry. We don't show up in big enough numbers. Okay, so what do? You know, all of you know people out here who would be at this meeting if they could or would be interested in what we have to say tonight. All of you know people whose kids aren't getting enough enrichment. If there are 15,000 under-challenged students, then we have 15,000 parents at least, you know, maybe twice that number out there who could be advocating, and yet they're not. So we need to change that. Oh, and before I move on, I would say, you know, as I said, in elementary and middle, they're almost certainly unchallenged. Once they get to high school, if their school offers genuine advanced placement, they'll be challenged, but for many of them, it'll be the first time they ever were. They don't have study skills. They don't have the character strength necessary to take something hard and maybe fail at it. They're scared. They take the easy classes. They'll check out, or they say, oh, you know, if I can't do it, it must not be worth doing because everything's always come easy to me. And if they're in schools that don't have a lot of AP-capable students, then they might be in AP classes that admit everybody who wants to take them because Jay Matthews says that everybody should get the opportunity to do college-level work in high school whether they're prepared or not. So those kids might have been able to do well in AP classes, but they won't get the chance because the class isn't going to be taught to that level. The teacher's going to have to spend too much time keeping the students who really didn't have the preparation up to the point where they can pass, because that's what they're going to get judged on. Not who passes the test, but how many pass the class. All right, so GT liaisons, when we send out GT-themed information, it's not just for you. It's for every parent in your schools who might be interested. So you should be posting all this stuff on your PTA listservs. You should be, you know, listening on the playground. You should be encouraging people to talk to you. And when you meet people who come to you with these concerns, put them in touch with the chairs of the Gifted Child Committee, with the president of GTA. You know, we need to combine and collect and work together. And I want you, finally, to push back against the repeated theme that we hear all the time, that only the 3% of the population that gets into the magnet programs needs anything different, and that all other students, all 97% other students, can all have their needs met by differentiation in a single classroom, okay? Kim's come with a broad spectrum of needs, abilities, and every school has to have multiple offerings in order to meet those needs. And unless we keep saying that and pushing back, we're not going to get them. So that's my talk for tonight. Thanks. Okay, Fiona, I'm going to call on you first because you waited and didn't get called on before.
Thank you. So
Do you want to bring it to the mic? I'm just going to take Fiona's question, and we'll introduce Patrick. And I really would like actually you to hear Patrick first, and then we can take questions together. But go ahead.
Sorry, I'm a nuisance. So a question that I hear quite often is parents are told, first advocate with the teacher, wait till the first parent-teacher conference. If you're not satisfied, you wait a couple of weeks after that, see if anything changes. Then you follow up with the teacher. Then you go to the principal who follows up with the teacher. And by the end of all of that, yeah, it's the end of the year. So can you give us some pointers on how to streamline that advocacy process and just bypass all the nonsense? And how do we do that more quickly?
Oh, I'm sorry, I turned it off. I beg your pardon. So don't be the kind of person you can't take seriously because you came in after the first day and said, my child was bored on day one. Okay, that's silly. But, if by the fourth week of school you have serious concerns, take them to the teacher then and ask for a timetable on which those concerns will be addressed. Don't expect it to be next week, but do expect it to be within a reasonable period of time. I want to work with you, but we need to have, we need to address this within a reasonable time frame. And then, in my experience, and I have 2 kids who are both in magnet programs, so I've done a lot of this kind of struggle myself. Building relationships is key to success in this kind of advocacy. You have to build a relationship with the teacher. If you have the opportunity and the wherewithal to volunteer in the classroom and to bring resources and energy to the school, that's always a good way to move that relationship forward faster. But, if you work full-time and you can't do that, still, approach the teacher as a partner. But, be clear on what you expect, what you need, what you think your child needs, and that you want to see some kind of response to these needs on a reasonable time frame. And then if you don't get it, go to the principal. And if you're seeing these problems in the first week of school, then all of that should have happened before the parent-teacher conference. So by the time you get to the parent-teacher conference, you should have the answers. That's what the parent-teacher conference should at least be about. Here's what we're going to do to implement to solve your problem, or we already implemented it, here's what's happened in the 3 weeks since then, that kind of thing. If you don't get that, then it's time to, everyone says go to the associate superintendent first. I really would go to Meredith first because she is far more focused on the needs of this particular cohort of kids, and I think she's less skittish about making sure the principal discretion isn't too, is observed. And since she is a former principal herself, she actually does strike a good balance between recognizing that principals have to have discretion and have to be masters of their own school, but at the same time, these kids' needs have to be met. And then the escalation goes from the principal to the associate superintendent. I would bring Meredith in at least parallel with that. And then, if you're not getting what you need after that, then it's time to go to the board and start complaining that you can't get what you need. Not naming names, but pointing out. And I think if you work with these people, you'll find in most cases what's holding your principal back is that the system is not providing the support necessary to serve these kids' needs because it's not a priority for the school system as a whole. So that would be my answer. With that, I think we're going to move on to Patrick so he has a chance to talk before the scheduled ending of the meeting because I have talked for far too long, and then we will take questions together.